We have reached the divisional round of the playoffs. For my money, the best football weekend of the year. 4 games on tap, of course. Let's go ahead and get to them quickly. Why don't we start in Philadelphia, where the 1-seed Eagles will host the 6-seed Atlanta Falcons. Falcons a 2.5-point favorite at BetSafe. This is the first time since the current playoff format was adopted in 1990 that a 6-seed has been favored over a 1-seed in the divisional round. There is one reason for that, of course, the injury to Philadelphia quarterback Carson Wentz. Wentz went down in Week 14, and the Eagles have just not been the same on offense. Nick Foles, his replacement, not getting the job done. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Philadelphia go to a really run-heavy approach here. They have 2 really good backs in Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount. And this Falcons defense has been good all season, but they're only average against the run. They surrender 4.2 yards per carry. That ranks 19th in the NFL. We saw them last week allow 101 yards on just 15 rushes to Rams tailback Todd Gurley. So again, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Eagles opt for a run-heavy approach here, and they might have some success with that, but success is all relative, of course. The Eagles are not going to be putting up 30 points in this game. The Falcons have been very stingy on defense lately. They have held 6 of their past 7 opponents to 20 points or fewer. That defense top 10 in the NFL in both yards allowed and points allowed. And last week they held the LA Rams, the NFL's highest scoring offense, to just 13 points. That is 17 points below the Rams' season average. As for the Atlanta offense, a little bit of a different story. They have struggled all season. They've averaged 12 points per game fewer this year than they did last year. That is a remarkable step back. And really, they've regressed over the course of the year. I mean, the 26 points they put up against the Rams last week, that's the most points they have scored in 6 games. And that point total, a little bit deceiving. They were helped by some Rams turnovers and miscues. Matt Ryan threw for just 218 yards on 30 attempts, and the Falcons were actually outgained. And here they'll be facing an Eagles defense that is 4th in the league in both yards allowed and points allowed. Also, remember, this is outdoors on the road for Atlanta, and it will be in January. Now, it's not supposed to be as cold Saturday as it is Sunday, but still, you never know. Outdoors in Philly, the wind could be a factor. Obviously, cool temperatures. Just doesn't set up well for Matt Ryan and this Atlanta offense. Not to mention, Julio Jones, banged up last week, has not been practicing this week, so the Falcons might be without their best playmaker, or they might have their best playmaker severely limited. So look, I think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive struggle. BetSafe offering several different totals markets. I'm focusing on 43.5. I like under that number at 164. Moving on now to New England, where the Patriots will host the Tennessee Titans. Pats a big 13.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 47 the total here. Now look, I know 13.5 is a big number, and all week I've heard reasons why we should be backing the Titans. Yes, they've won a couple of games they absolutely had to have. Yes, Derrick Henry does have it rolling now. Yes, Marcus Mariota, even though he struggled this season, he has come up big in big situations. And you look at the Tennessee defense schematically, and yeah, they can pressure you up the middle. They play press coverage on the outside, got some good defensive backs. I mean, maybe they could give the New England offense trouble, I guess. But you zoom out and look at the big picture here. Tennessee was not playing good football towards the end of the season. They had lost 3 straight games prior to beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 15-10 in Week 17. And as well as they played in the second half last week against Kansas City, boy, did they look bad in the first half, falling behind 21-3. I just don't know how this Titans offense is going to keep up here. 23rd in the NFL in total offense, and they have scored 24 points or fewer in 11 straight games. And before you tell me that, well, New England has one of the worst defenses in the NFL and you throw a whole bunch of numbers at me, you should know that those numbers were badly skewed from the first month of the season when the Patriots played really poorly on the defensive side of the ball. Since then, they've actually been really good on defense. The Patriots have held 10 of their last 12 opponents to 17 points or fewer. Not coincidentally, they're 11-1 in those 12 games. And importantly, because we're talking about a 13.5-point number here, 7 of New England's last 9 wins have come by 17 points or more. So look, they've been blowing out teams on the regular. They've had an extra week to prepare here. They're better than Tennessee on both sides of the ball. I know it's tough to lay a number like 13.5, but I think it's the right call in this situation. Moving on now to Pittsburgh, where the Steelers will host the Jacksonville Jaguars. Steelers a 7-point favorite at BetSafe. 40.5 is the total here. Now, these teams met back in Week 5 in Pittsburgh, and the Jags pulled off a stunning 30-9 victory. Ben Roethlisberger throwing 5 interceptions in that game, and the Jags coming away with a 21-point win, despite their quarterback Blake Bortles throwing for fewer than 100 yards. And heading into this week's game, Yes, that Jacksonville defense should come to play once again, but how can you not be concerned about Blake Bortles after seeing him last week against the Buffalo Bills? I mean, look, he is clearly the weak link on this Jacksonville team, and it was clear to me that he did not have any confidence last week after missing a couple of throws early. Coming here on the road, facing this Pittsburgh defense that ranks 5th in the NFL in yards allowed, 7th in points allowed, surrendering just 19.3 points per game. Yes, I know the Steelers haven't quite been the same defensively since losing Ryan Shazier, but still, this is one of the better defenses in the NFL, and they will have a plan for this one-dimensional Jacksonville offense. Leonard Fournette, the last time these teams met, ran all over the Steelers. I do not think that's going to happen again here. I fully expect Pittsburgh to load the box and try to make Blake Bortles beat them with his arm. Will he be able to do it? I'll tell you what, after seeing him last week, it's hard to have much faith. Now look, I know the Jacksonville defense is great. 2nd in the NFL in both yards allowed and points allowed. And I know Pittsburgh's best receiver, Antonio Brown, banged up with that calf injury, questionable here, even though he has been practicing this week. And apparently he's been looking pretty good in practice. But if you like the Jacksonville side here, you're probably thinking their defense is going to control this game and make it an ugly, low-scoring affair. But this Pittsburgh offense can beat you a lot of different ways. And even if the passing attack isn't humming, remember, they have an all-pro running back in Le'Veon Bell. And this Jacksonville defense, as good as they've been in the secondary, not great against the run. Just 21st against the run. They surrender 4.3 yards per carry, 116.3 yards per game. So Pittsburgh might be able to get something going on the ground here. Something else I want to mention. Temperatures expected to be below freezing. Now, you'd say, well, who does that favor? I know Jacksonville's a southern team, but they play great defense and they're a run-first offense. Normally, that's the type of team that you would think would excel in bad weather, and that might be true. There's one guy I'd like to talk about here, Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles, a Florida boy, born and raised in Florida, college, University of Central Florida, plays now obviously for the Jaguars. Do you trust Blake Bortles on the road in the playoffs in Pittsburgh in sub-freezing temperatures? Boy, I sure do not. I like the Steelers to win this game. I think Jacksonville's going to hang around for a while, but I like Pittsburgh to pull away in the second half and cover that 7-point number. Final game I'd like to talk about, the marquee game of the weekend, the New Orleans Saints traveling to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Minnesota, a 4-point favorite at BetSafe, 46.5 the total in this one. These teams met way back in week 1, Vikings winning that one 29-19, but both teams very different now. Minnesota, for one, they have a different starting quarterback. It was Sam Bradford, then it's Case Keenum now. And back then, their starting running back was Dalvin Cook. Now, it's more of a by-committee thing with Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon. But the offense is secondary in Minnesota. It is this great Minnesota defense. That's the reason why the Vikings have been so good this season. That's the reason why they've won 11 of their past 12 games. The Vikings lead the NFL in both yards allowed and points allowed. They surrender just 15.8 points per game, and that defense has been absolutely dominant lately. The Vikings, they won their last 3 games by a combined score of 73-17. Now, it should be pointed out, those 3 games came against Cincinnati, Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, and the Chicago Bears. They'll be facing an entirely different animal this week when Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints come to town. The Saints, 2nd in the NFL in total offense, 4th in points scored, averaging 28 points per game, and they're just so balanced on that side of the ball. 5th in the league in both rushing offense and passing offense, so there's really no weakness there. As we saw last week. Last week, the Carolina Panthers decided they were going to crowd the line of scrimmage and really take away that New Orleans rushing attack. And what did Drew Brees do? He responded by completing 23 of 33 passes for 376 yards and 2 touchdowns. Make no mistake, Brees is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and if you force him to beat you, he will do it. And really, when I look at this game, you know, it's tough. I've gone back and forth. The Minnesota defense is so good, and obviously they've had an extra week to prepare. But I can't get past the Drew Brees versus Case Keenum matchup. Yes, I know Keenum has played some good football this season, but we've seen Keenum a lot. We saw him playing for the LA Rams. We saw him playing for the Houston Texans. And I can't help but feeling that eventually Case Keenum is going to turn into Case Keenum, and it's not going to be good enough for this Vikings team to advance to the Super Bowl. And if you give me Drew Brees and 4 points in a situation like this, boy, I am going to take it. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts for this divisional round weekend. I wish you best of luck no matter what you decide to do this weekend, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. For Bet Safe, I'm John Arnett.